Hello, friends. So, Bible study. The NIV Acts 24, and we're just going to go through all of chapter 24. So, the trial before Felix, that's the governor, and this is, Paul, right? So, the Romans have had to come in and save Paul because the Jewish people were so, very all worked up by the words he was saying, because he's preaching the way. That's what they call it, the way. Okay. And the commander in the area just wasn't having it. They weren't. The Jews weren't being believable to him. 5 days later, the high priest Ananias, so Paul's been in prison for 5 days now with the governor, went down to Caesarea with some of the elders and a lawyer named Tertullus, Tertullus. And they brought their charges against Paul before the governor, because that's what they were said. He's like, this matter is going to be considered over if you don't bring formal charges, because, we happened upon you, according to Roman law, the Jewish people by, were assaulting him, essentially. With, like, they had no rights to be doing any of this. So it's like, you bring in charges or you let this go, kind of thing. When Paul was called in, Tertullus presented his case before Felix. We have enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation. Everywhere and in every way, most excellent Felix, we acknowledge this with profound gratitude. So kissing up. Not a bad plan in these, the way this is. But in order to not weary you further, I would request you be kind enough to hear us briefly. Let us bring our case before you for the charges we have. We have found this man to be a troublemaker. He's a rabble-rouser, just like Jesus before him, stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect. And that to me is so funny, because Nazareth, of course, is an area. That's where Jesus grew up. That's why he's Jesus of Nazareth, right? So that's first. And secondly, the Jewish people have this thing called a Nazarite vow, which has some very specific rules attached to it about how you're supposed to be conducting your life. You're not supposed to be around dead bodies. You're not supposed to be drinking any alcohol. You can't have anything with blood in it. Like, all your food needs to be cooked. Like, you can't have medium rare steak. It has to be done. And because no dead bodies. You can't cut your hair, right? That's why at the beginning of a purification ritual, they're shaving all their head off. Like, just the whole hair is going to be gone. Not the head itself, of course. They keep their head attached to their bodies naturally. But all the hair on the head is gone. And that's because that's part of a Nazarite vow. So they're calling it a sect, and even tried to desecrate the temple. So we seized him. So this is pretty specific accusations. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about him. All these charges that we are bringing about him. So examine him yourself. The Jews joined in the accusation, asserting that these things were true. So lots of yelling to get loud. More people agree than you were likely to win, right? When the governor motioned for him to speak, because this isn't the Sanhedrin anymore. These are the Romans. Paul is a Roman citizen, just like these people are Roman citizens. He has rights here that the Sanhedrin would rather he not have rights. The Sanhedrin would rather the governor hand over Paul so they can go execute him, just like they did Stephen. This is setting a precedent. This is like something going before the Supreme Court. Because if the governor decides that this is not a problem, then this means they can't touch the rest of the Christians either. So it's very important in the history of how these things come about. Because the Sanhedrin are senators in their culture. They're not just religious leaders. They're political leaders. The Sadducees don't even believe in an afterlife. So they're really not all that different from how you're going to find a smattering of different beliefs, and just like you would if you went to our own Congress or whatever your body of representation is for your government, wherever you are. Because there are people who watch these things all over the world. And by these things, I mean my videos. So, the governor motioned for him to speak. Paul replied, I know that for a number of years you have been a judge over this nation, so I gladly make my defense. You can easily verify that not more than 12 days ago I went up to Jerusalem to worship. My accusers did not find me arguing with anybody at the temple or stirring up a crowd in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city. And they cannot prove to you these charges they are now making against me. However, I admit that I worship the God of our fathers as a follower of the way. That's what they're calling Christianity. The way. Which they call a sect. I believe everything that agrees with the law and that was written in the prophets. Because Jesus did the work the prophets said the Messiah would do. So he doesn't need to argue with any part of the law and try to say any of it is invalid. He actually doesn't even feel that way. And I have the same hope in God as these men, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. Then, me too. So I understand. After an absence of several years, I came to Jerusalem to bring my people gifts for the poor and present offerings. I was ceremonially clean when they found me in the temple courts doing this, because he was 6 days in to his 7-day purification process. There was no crowd with me, nor was I involved in any disturbance. But there are some Jews from the province of Asia who ought to be here before you and bring charges if they have anything against me. Because I was rabble-rousing there, but I was purifying myself here, so that I could come back in alignment with the law of Moses. No laws broken here, just salty people is what he's saying. Or these who are here should state what crime they found in me when I stood before the Sanhedrin, unless it was the one thing I shouted as I stood there in their presence. It is the concerning of the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today. Because I believe in Jesus is why I'm here, not because of anything else. Then Felix, who was well acquainted with the way, adjourned the proceedings. When Lysias, the commander, comes, he said, I will decide your case. He ordered the centurion to keep Paul under guard, but give him some freedom and permit his friends to take care of his needs. Like, he can have visitors. We're keeping him here for protection. I haven't decided that he's actually done anything wrong. Several days later, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was a Jewess, so a female Jew. He sent for Paul and listened to him as he spoke about the faith of Christ Jesus. Okay, so now this is an important factor here, because in the history of the Roman Empire, this was a common thing. The Roman commander of an area or a governor or, whoever it was going to be, it was common for them to marry somebody who was local. Because then when you have kids, and the kids are growing up in the area, the people in that area are less likely to fight and want to rebel, because their commander, the one who will inherit this, because that's usually how it worked in that area. Now, they could have other people appointed, but you really wanted to pass it down father to son, and they would let you do that if you could prove your kid was competent. So they do it in that way so that their sons would then be accepted. The candles are really flickering very much so over there. I've got a couple of them burning today. And they're prayer candles for healing. As Paul discoursed on the righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come. Now, righteousness and self-control. Self-control is a big component in the Roman or even Greek cultures, especially during this time frame of history we're talking about. That was one of the measures of a man, was how well he could control himself around his enemies to not let anything show. That's just in case you're wondering how long that emotional suppression has been expected of men. It's been a very long time, which might be why they haven't quite gotten rid of it yet, if they're even trying. Felix was afraid because some of the measures of the judgment to come have to do on how well you treat other people around you, which is often in that society seen as a weakness. And said, that's enough for now. You may leave. When I find it convenient, I will send for you. At the same time, he was hoping Paul would offer him a bribe. So he sent for him frequently and talked with him. When 2 years had passed, so that's a long time, right? 2 years. Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. Porcius. Porcius. That's how I pronounce that. Festus. Definitely Festus. 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 But because Felix wanted to grant favor to the Jews, he left Paul in prison. So Paul is safe in prison, being the personal preacher to a Roman who's married to a Jew. And now he's under another governor entirely, and he's still in prison. But treated well, and out of the way of the people who would have him killed. He got people murdered. If you're going to do that kind of thing, you spend some time in prison. Just because he now follows the way and he preaches the word of Jesus doesn't mean there doesn't need to be justice for the people that he was responsible for killing. And he understands that. He's not fighting it. That's why he was like, no, I got to go. I got to do my double mission. I got to show penance for the crimes that I've done and try to keep my conscience clear. And then I got a dedication to serve him in wherever he wants me to serve him. So he's sending me here. I will serve him. And I will help bring the Gentiles, because he's always had better luck with the Gentiles than with the religious zealot Jews. The thinking Jews, he does a little better with. The religious zealot Jews, he stirs up their emotions. So he's where he needs to be, even if he's in confinement, because Creator will use whatever energy happens to be available in that moment to make something happen, if that's what they want to do. So let's remember that today we go with the flow, and we always end up where we're meant to be, dealing with exactly what we're meant to be dealing with.